Hey guys. Okay, please don't forget to turn your cameras on. You'll need to have them on, remember? Okay, there's only one person with the camera on. Please make sure that you turn your cameras on. Okay, guys, well, in the meantime, this week we're gonna be looking at the speaking section. We're gonna start with the speaking section with the first task of the speaking section more specifically. So let's take a look at this. I wanted to say though that the speaking and the writing, both sections are production sections, right? So you get to produce your own responses. It's not so black and white as the listening and reading. And well, honestly, I think that for most people, it's easier to get a higher score here in the speaking and in the writing. So it's all about practice. It's a little bit about vocabulary, but most of all is practice. And well, because I think most of you guys are already fluent, so it should be okay. So here in the speaking section, you guys will find 4 tasks, okay, or 4 questions. You have 4 questions in the speaking section, and you will have both independent and integrated questions. Now, what does this mean? Independent and integrated. So basically, whenever you hear the word independent here in the TOEFL test, it means that you are not going to be required to read or listen to anything or summarize anything before you answer the question. So it's just the question and the answer. So they ask you the question and you need to give the answer. That's it. But when you have integrated tasks, as you can see in the preview of each question, you're going to have to summarize something. So you're either summarizing a reading passage, or you're summarizing a conversation or a lecture, listening, whatever it is, but you're going to summarize something for all of the integrated tasks. Okay, so you're not going to have to give your opinion. You're just going to have to summarize something else. Whereas in the independent task, you will have to summarize your opinion. I'm sorry, you won't have to summarize anything. You just have to give your opinion. Okay, so yeah, in general, just know you have 4 tasks, 1 independent, 3 integrated. And today we'll start with the independent question. Now, before we get there, I'm gonna tell you guys a bit of how this section is scored in general, how they evaluate your speaking section, okay? So first of all, I wanted to say that you can find the rubrics online. So if you look for TOEFL independent, well, TOEFL speaking rubrics, then you will find it there. I'm actually gonna send this document to you. So this is the rubrics that they use, the criteria they use to score your speaking section. You can have access to that, but I will summarize it now for you guys. So basically, they're gonna be looking at 3 big categories. All right, they will look at language used, they will look at content, and then we'll look at organization, okay? So those are the 3 big categories that they are looking or they're expecting from you. So the first category here, language, refers to, well, everything that covers language, right? So it's about fluency. So it's about how fluent you sound. So by now you should be fluent when you're taking this test, but this could be affected by other factors as well, right? So it's about the speed at which you talk, the number of pauses that you make, if you're using too many filler words, or if you're using filler words from a different language, in Spanish maybe if you're like struggling to express your ideas. So those are things that count as for a non-fluent person. So they will look at fluency. Doesn't mean that you have to speak super fast. No, it just means that you need to speak at a constant rate, right? It doesn't matter if it's fast or not. So that's one thing. Now, another thing is pronunciation. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have to have an accent, that you have to sound like a native speaker. No, the only thing that you need to worry about with pronunciation is that you're being understandable, that the listener could actually understand what you're saying without putting a lot of effort. So if the listener has to put a lot of effort in order to understand, then that's a problem for your score, right? So that's pronunciation, how you're articulating the words, you're pronouncing them in the right way, if you're stressing the words in an understandable way. So pronunciation. Another thing is vocabulary and word choice. So vocabulary means how extensive your vocabulary is, right? If you're not repeating the same words. For example, if you always say, I think, because, it's not good for your vocabulary, right? Or in word choice, which is another aspect of vocabulary. So word choice basically means how appropriate the words you're using are. So if you're talking about work and you say, well, I like the people that I work with, instead of I like my coworkers, about business, and if you say, well, the people that buy things instead of the consumers, then it's not so appropriate, right? So that's word choice. I'm going to be sending you a document with some words related to the topics that you will find here, so that you can study some specific vocabulary for this speaking section, okay? Try to sound natural, because it also affects your score. So a lot of people will tell you that you need to be super formal and academic, which is true. You need to try to be a bit academic. You're not gonna use a lot of slang words or course here, but you don't have to be that formal, okay? Leave that for the writing. Here you can just sound natural, the way that you would speak in an academic environment, but with a friend, maybe with not necessarily like you do when you write. So just try to be cool, calm, and collected, as the saying goes. And finally, the hardest part to achieve is grammar. So it's not only about not making grammar mistakes, which is obviously part of the rubric, but it's also about showing that you have achieved that advanced grammar, okay? So you gotta show some grammar variety. That means you need to use more complex sentences, more complex structures, more tenses if you can. So you're gonna have to show some grammar variety, okay? You cannot just use these very simple sentences or phrases without any connection. So all of that is language, okay? Then you have content. I want to get over this quickly. You have content, which basically means if you're answering the question directly, if you're not going off topic, if they ask you about food and you talk about music, that's not logical. So how coherent, how logical everything is, that's quite easy, which covers how organized everything is. So whether your ideas are flowing in the right way, if you have the structure of an argumentative response, if you're using some transitions to switch ideas. So you will be okay with this as long as you follow the template that I'm going to be giving you for the templates that I'll give you for each task. All right. Or if you create your own template, that's fine as well. So in general, you want to try to, it's important that you know how they scored your essay so that you can try to focus on those things that you feel that are missing. So when you're practicing, you're going to focus on those things. Like if you feel that, okay, you need to practice this specific grammar point, then you're going to go practice that. So I'll give you some tips to work on that later. But right now, that's how they score it. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for now, not right now. Questions? Okay, guys. So let's start with the first independent question, okay? That's what we're going to be working on, the first independent question. So this question is, I mean, the way that it works, it's pretty easy to understand. You get a question, you get 15 seconds to prepare your response or to think about what you're going to say, and then you have to answer the question in 45 seconds. That's the structure. You get the question, 15 seconds to prepare, and 45 seconds to speak. Now, the question itself is going to be about your opinion on a familiar topic. So something that you would discuss in an everyday setting. Okay, so probably these are the most common topics. So you got work life, you got academic life, so college, school, lifestyle and health. So maybe hobbies, your hobbies, sports, diet. You have something about technology sometimes. So what your opinion on technology, its impact, financial decisions, like basic ones. So maybe if you save money every month, or if you prefer to wait for a product before buying it. And sometimes the environment. So climate change, environmental issues, and so on. So by the way, the the vocabulary that I'll send will be covering those topics. Relationships, that's another thing for lifestyle. So, so I'll send you this document, okay? You have some expressions relating to those topics, but you can obviously look for more on your own, okay? But it should be helpful. So those are what the questions are going to be about. Now, the most important part here is that all of the questions are going to provide you with some options from which you have to choose. So it's not just going to be like an open question. No, it's going to be, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Or do you prefer this or that? So you always have two or more options and you have to choose one of those. So for example, you can have something like, let me show you some examples. So this one here, do you prefer to have an early dinner around 4 p.m. or to have a late dinner around 8 or 9 p.m.? Right? So you have two options, early dinner, late dinner. Now, some people believe that people who sell illegal drugs should be jailed, and others think that they shouldn't. So what do you think? So should they or shouldn't they be jailed? Now, this one here, I know it sounds too complex, but they are rare, okay? You don't always have one of these questions about violence and government or other issues, but you may. It's not that common though. I'll give you some tips for that. So do you prefer to work from home or to go to your job location? And then you have the agree or disagree type, very common. So you have, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Only digital textbooks should be available for university students. So should digital textbooks be available for university students? Do you agree or disagree? So you have two options, right? If you say that you agree, then you're saying that yes, only digital textbooks should be available for university students. And if you say that you disagree, then you're saying that no, digital textbooks should be available for everyone. So you always have two options. You have to choose one and answer the question. So do you have any questions so far now? As for this part, I wanted to say some things important that are important to mention. You only get one shot, one chance. So no matter what happens, you cannot go again. Everything's automatic. So it's mechanic. Nobody's gonna be there unless you take the home edition test. But even then, you will not somebody, the instructions will be read to you. Then you get the question, then the 15 seconds with the timer there, and then they say, so you can start speaking after the beep. And there's a beep, you speak, 45 seconds, another beep, and they stop recording. So whatever you say after the 45 seconds are over will not count. Okay, so it's very mechanic. You only get one chance. So if you don't have some questions, before we take a look at an example and see everything else, I'll give you guys some beforehand tips. So the first one of all is you don't have to be on it, okay? So I'm saying this because some people will be like, okay, let's say that you have this one here, for example. Do you prefer to attend university classes in the morning, afternoon, or evening? So if in reality you don't have an opinion on this, don't say that. Don't tell me, well, I don't have an opinion on this. I don't care when my classes are held. So you need to actually follow the structure and make it up if you don't really have an opinion. Another thing is you can make up anything you want. It doesn't have to be true, right? So you could say, well, I'm an architect and I have to do this. Even if you're not an architect, that's fine. You can make up data as well. You could say, well, I've read in the New York Times that people or students who take afternoon classes tend to have better grades. Okay, so I'm completely making that up, and that's fine. So you don't have to be honest. The information that you give doesn't have to be true. They won't check, they won't care. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing is make sure that you have a strong position, that you have a strong mind on this. So you have 2, 3 options for, you need to always choose one of them and only support that option with your life. So never ever contrast or compare your options. Don't be like, well, I think that having classes in the morning is a great idea because you have more energy and you are more fresh in the morning. However, I do believe that afternoon classes may also be good because you have time in the morning to do other stuff. So when I say that, I'm comparing, contrasting pros and cons. The listener is not going to have an idea of what my position is. I won't have the structure of an argumentative response, and it will just be harder for you. So make sure that you always choose one of the options. So afternoon classes, and that's it. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about evening classes or morning classes. So that's one thing. Another thing is it's okay to be, it's actually better if you're specific, make it personal. Okay, like if you have a question that's like this one. So some students prepare for tests in their dorms, and other students like to go to libraries, right? So in your response, you don't need to talk about these students. You need to talk about yourself. So don't tell me, well, I think that the students who go to libraries are the ones that are doing the best thing because they are going to do this and that. No, just tell me personally, when I was in college, I prefer this. Or right now I'm in college, or as a student, I prefer to go to the library to prepare for tests. Okay, so make it personal, make it specific if you want. You can name somebody, you can mention dates, that's okay. Don't try to make it so long. So if you ask me, I would say it's better to have some extra time instead of running out of time. Okay, so if you run out of time, you didn't have enough extra time, and maybe you added a conclusion in there, then it's better. Okay, so don't try to make it so long. It's just 45 seconds. Practice as much as you can and take active practice. So what I was telling you, right? We're gonna be practicing here. You will practice with Jasmani. We will practice in the speaking sessions. And you need to practice on your own as well. Don't just practice here. But when you practice, I'll give you some feedback, right? I'll tell you, okay, so I think that you're struggling with this grammar point, maybe with your plurals, okay? So when you're practicing, you're gonna record yourself and you're gonna be set your goals, right? You're gonna be like, okay, now I'm gonna focus on not messing up with the plurals for now. Then I'm gonna focus on the transitions, and you can go practicing like that. You can repeat your question, but try to analyze your responses, okay? Don't just question, answer, and you leave it there. You don't even look back at what you said in the response. And finally, there's one more tip, and then we're done, I promise. Don't use anything that you're not confident with. So don't use any phrases, don't use any grammar structure, any word, if you don't feel that you can do it, if you don't feel that you can deal with it, that you have perfected that grammar lesson. So maybe you're not so good at using it, so try to avoid using it, right? They're not going to force you to use it. So if you feel that you have a problem with using different tenses, then just stick to the simple present. So only use those things, those tools that you feel comfortable with. Okay, that's the last tip. And that's it, you guys. I don't know if now you have any questions before moving on to the example. Okay, guys. So, okay, so let's take a look at the example part. Can anyone please read this question? For me?
Hello, teacher. I can read.
Yes, sure, Francisco, go ahead.
Okay. Do you prefer to attend university classes in the morning, afternoon, or evening? Provide specific details to support your explanation.
Okay. So, as you can see here, we have three options, right? Morning, afternoon, or evening classes. So what you need to do after reading the question, you're going to get those 15 seconds, right? Which is almost nothing. So you can take some notes. You can write down some things. First thing you need to do is obviously choose the option that you're going to go for. So what would you guys say? Morning, afternoon, or evening classes? Anyone?
I believe in the morning is a good idea.
Yes. I'm sorry, come again. Did anyone say something?
Yes, I believe that in the morning it's a good idea.
Okay, let's go for that. Morning classes, thank you. Now, so you decide that, and the only thing that you need to worry about when you're preparing, my advice, only focus, don't try to like write down your response or your intro or anything like that. The only thing you need to think about is the reason you're gonna give. So think of why. So why morning classes? Why not afternoon or evening classes? So why? Why do you prefer morning classes?
Could be because you have more energy and you feel fresh, maybe.
Okay. You have more energy, you feel more fresh. Good. So that's it. That's everything you have time to do, okay? It should be super quick. So now that's the only thing that you're actually going to prepare. Everything else is going to have to be improvised if we're being realistic, okay? You are going to have to improvise an example as well. In your response, you're going to need to have your introduction, then your reason, and finally your example. So you're going to have to improvise an example as you go. But this is easier than you may be thinking. It's just practice, okay? And the example is only supposed to be something a bit more specific of what you already said. So you're not going to have to create something new. If you're saying more energy, fresh, you're just going to have to use that and put it into a more specific scenario. So I'm going to give you some ideas for you. You can always give personal examples, okay? So here you can tell me a personal experience, a past experience, okay? So this is great when you have achieved an advanced level. If you consider yourself as an advanced student and you feel confident with using different tenses, you really want a great score and you want to show your grammar, then try to tell a past experience. So you can be like, okay, there was this time when I was taking this biology class at 3 p.m. and I felt like I never had enough energy. I was always sleepy and I ended up failing the class only because I wasn't paying enough attention and I didn't have as much energy as I would have if I had taken a morning class, okay? So that's an experience. I'm telling you about a time where I took an afternoon class. I didn't have enough energy. I wasn't fresh enough. I failed the class. So I would have liked to take a morning class instead. So it's a past experience that I'm making up. I'm just saying the same with a more specific scenario, right? It's great for grammar because I can use different tenses. I'm saying I was taking this biology class at 3 p.m. and I didn't, or I wasn't paying as much attention as I could have. So I'm using different grammar structures there that are great for showing that complexity that we want to show, okay? But that's not necessary. If you feel that you're just gonna mess up with the grammar there, then I stick to a routine, okay? So you can tell me, right now I'm in college, and every time I have the chance to choose a class, I choose a morning class. Like right now I have this biology class at 7 a.m. and I feel that I am so energetic in the morning, and I feel fresh and I'm doing great at my class. I'm getting good grades. So I love it. Okay, so I'm just sticking to the routine. Everything is in the simple present and it's still a personal exam and it still works. Okay, so that's one thing you guys can do. Another thing will be just like a general example. So with a conditional sentence, you can be like, which is good for grammar as well, conditionals. So you can say, when you are taking classes in the morning, you have more energy, as a matter of fact, and maybe you can make yourself a nice breakfast, a complete breakfast. You can work out before your classes. So I'm just being a bit more specific about the things that you can do, okay? So that's it, a general example. Or maybe you can also make up a fact. So I think I already gave you an idea of how this works. You just make up something. So I read this article, I heard about this research, I talked to this person, whatever you want to say. So I read it in this magazine. That students who have morning classes, or that your brain works 10 times better in the morning. So I'm just making it up, okay? Something like that. It's harder to make up a fact, but you have that option as well. So that's the thing with examples. Any questions now? Okay, guys. So please excuse me a second. I'm gonna try to, I think my connection is not working so well. So I'm gonna try and fix it. Okay, sorry for that. So, okay. Now, in your response, here's what you guys need to do. Okay. So first of all, you need to have a short, brief introduction in which you're gonna directly answer the question. Okay, so you can paraphrase it if you want, but you need to basically answer this question. So basically, the only thing that I would tell you here, try to avoid saying I think so much. Okay, you could say, I would say, and here you have some options. So for example, you could say, I don't know, hold on. Maybe when it comes to studying, I prefer morning classes. Okay, or the way I see it, in my opinion, all of these are synonyms for I think. Okay, so maybe, Diego, what would you say to answer this question here for your introduction?
Well, I would say when it comes to sports, soccer is not as interesting as people say.
Okay, great. Right now, so okay, you're talking about something else though, right? For this question here about classes, what would you say?
And when it comes to studies, I would definitely say that I prefer going to morning classes because in that way I have time to work at the afternoon.
Okay, great. You already introduced the reason to. That's nice. And I love your interest. So when it comes to studies, I would definitely say this is better. And I like the fact that you're also using these adverbs, which is another thing that I would try to do. So I would definitely, absolutely, I strongly agree. I totally support. So those are really good to use. But in general, you just have to have that introduction there. Then you need to move on to the reason, the way that Diego did. So you say why, right? So since directly. So since, try not to say because. So since, as, for, all those are synonyms of because. So since, and then you explain your reason, right? Which in this case is, what's the reason? You have more energy, you feel more fresh. So you just go ahead and say it. My advice, make the argument or the reason shorter. So one clause, one sentence is fine. Doesn't have to be that long. Some people tend to try to explain too much, which is good, you know, you can explain, but that makes you more redundant. And it's more likely that you're just repeating the same idea all over again. So try to make it shorter. And then in your example, you can make it a bit longer because you're not going to be exactly repeating, right? With the example, you're just going to tell the story. Or maybe you can do something else that I'll tell you now. But try to keep it short. And then after you give the reason, you need to move on to the example. So you say, for instance, to illustrate, my personal experience illustrates this reality. And then you just go ahead and give me the example, whatever it is, whether it's a personal one, a general one, a fact, however, whatever you decided to go for. And that's it. Now, if you have more time, and this is something that we're going to see as we go when we practice, some people sometimes tend to have a lot of time here. So if you're one of those people, then you can add one more reason. So you could say something like, furthermore, and you add one more reason. And then you say, I also work in the afternoon, so I really have no time scheduled for classes, but the morning. And then you can give an example more if you have more time. So you can do that if you have a lot of time in there. And if you only have like 10 seconds, then you can go with a short introduction. With a short conclusion. So you just wrap it up with a closing idea and you say, so that's why whenever I have the chance to choose, I always take morning classes. Or that's why I feel that morning classes are the best thing for students. So you just wrap it up with a short conclusion, which is not necessary. But if you have time, which you normally do, you can do it. And that's it. Is it okay? I don't know if you guys have any questions now. Okay. So is there anyone who would like to try with this question here? I mean, we already have an idea what to say, You just need to put everything together with the timer. Anyone wants to try?
Me,
Can I
teacher.
try, teacher?
Please don't forget your cameras. I see you guys are. Yes, sure. Who was that? Fabiana, of course.
Yes.
Okay, so you can go now. Hello?
Sorry, teacher. I have time for prepare, or I only start.
Yes, well, you would actually have time to prepare. Okay, I'll give you 15 seconds
Okay.
to prepare your response. The same question. Okay. So now you can start, Fabian.
Okay, teacher. I would definitely say that I prefer classes at mornings since I have more energy and I be more fresh. To illustrate, when I study at mornings, I feel better and I have better results when I have my tests. Last week, I had a test and I study at morning, but I study one day at night and I don't have a good results.
Okay, good, great. So nice. I see that you had some time there, but you were also a bit rushed. Okay, try to just take it slowly. But it was great. You had your introduction, you had your reason, and you also exemplified it with 2 examples, I think. Careful with the tenses. So I studied one day and I didn't at night, and I didn't have such great results. Right? Careful with those tenses, with conjugating some verbs as well, with the verb be. I am more fresh instead of I be more fresh. And expressions, time expressions, right? In the morning, at night, the afternoon. But I think it was great. Maybe with you we can reach. That was great. Okay, guys. So that's basically it. I don't know if you guys have some questions now. You will be practicing tomorrow. Now I would like to look at a sample response and analyze it. But tell me if you have some questions now.
I have a question, teacher. Is better if you pass the time, or if you have enough time, for example, 5 seconds
Okay.
before you finish?
Okay, great question. So I would say it's okay if you have some extra time, like out of the 45 seconds, if you do it in 43, in 40 seconds, that's okay. You know, if you have like 5 seconds left, it's better than if you run out of time. Now, if you run out of time, it's not such a big deal either way. The only thing that you need to be careful is that you actually got to have what you needed to have, right? Your reason and your example. But if you ran out of time and you didn't like give the example because you were explaining the reason so much, then that could be a problem. So it's better if when you practice, you're gonna get used to the idea of speaking for 45 seconds, and you're gonna know for how long you should be speaking in each part. So it will become easier, but in general, it is better if you have some extra time left, like 5 seconds at most. Okay, not like 20 seconds, because that will be almost half of the response.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, it's better if you have extra time. Any other question? Okay. So you'll practice tomorrow with just money, and also Friday, and well, Thursday we also have some classes. But let's take a look at one sample response. Okay, this question here is, do you agree or disagree with the following sentence? and it says we can learn a lot from making mistakes. So if you agree, then you do believe that we can learn a lot from mistakes. And if you disagree, then you don't think we learned that much with mistakes. So we're gonna listen to a sample response. I'm gonna play it and you guys let me know what you think. And then we take a look at some comments on the response, some elements of it.
I totally agree that we can learn a lot from making mistakes. First of all, we always remember how our past mistakes made us feel, and since they usually make us feel really terrible, we try to avoid repeating them so we don't feel that way again. We also take deliberate action to avoid it. For instance, last year before my big science midterm, I made the mistake of playing video games all day long. As a result, of course, I failed the test and I felt miserable. But I learned from that it's very important to study and to prepare for tests. So the next year, during exam season, I buckled down, I studied, and I learned a lot.
Okay, so that was a sample response. What do you think of it? Any comments on the response? How was it?
Good organization, introduction, and then a reason, an example.
Okay, yes, that's cool. That's right. So he has only one reason, one example. Other people from this same website have two reasons, two examples, I think. Okay, first of all, the first thing I want to say is that this is not a realistic response. Okay, so don't worry too much if you saw this and there's a lot of information here. It was only 45 seconds, but he did talk for a while and he had a lot of things to say. His example is long, we could say, but this was obviously prepared. Okay, I really doubt that he prepared this for 15 seconds and improvised everything. Okay, so don't worry if your response is not like this. It's not supposed to be this way. You don't need something like this in order to get a good score. So this is not realistic. Okay, don't expect it to be this way. It's okay. But we can analyze it and maybe look for some elements that we can try to have in our responses or maybe some comments. Okay, so first of all, in the introduction, first thing I like is that he has these adverbs that we were saying, right? Like I totally agree, I absolutely disagree, I completely agree, I'm strongly in favor of these. So you can use those adverbs to help you sound more sure of what you're saying. Now, one thing that I could comment on, it's not that I don't like, but I just want to make a comment. So he's repeating the statement, right? I agree that we can learn a lot from making mistakes. It's a simple template. So I agree that, and then copy and paste the statement. So you can do that if you have this agree or disagree type. You can copy and paste it. It's fine. It's not going to be a big deal for vocabulary or anything. Because everything else have like a longer statement, which happens. You can try to paraphrase it sometimes. So here you could say, well, I totally agree that mistakes teach us great lessons, or that mistakes are, I don't know, a great teacher. So we can paraphrase it. Another thing that you guys can do, especially if you have a long statement, which happens, you can also say, I totally agree with the mentioned statement. You know, you could say with the previous statement, with the statement above, or the claim, something like that. You can use other synonyms as well for agree. If you want to sound even more fancy than that, you could say, I totally advocate that idea, okay, which means I agree, I support, I'm in favor. Those are synonyms. You can look for ways to create your template, right? You can use these ideas. If you have like do you prefer this or that question? Then you could say, I would prefer, I would choose, And another thing you can do is to refer to the options. Instead of saying the first and second option, you can always say the former and latter option or choice. Okay, that also sounds very formal. So you could say, well, I would totally prefer the latter option, so that you don't repeat in case your options are too long. Okay, if they're not, then you can just paraphrase it or repeat. So those are some ideas for the introduction. You can use adverbs, you can paraphrase the question, you can refer to the question with this, and you can also use a synonym for the verb. Okay, so those are some comments on the intro, but it's very clear and it's short, which is how it should be. Now, what else? Something else is that he's using a lot of transitions, right? So first of all, for instance, but, so, as a result, and that's something that you guys need to try and do. So check out some transition words. You're gonna have to use them. They help with the structure, they help with vocabulary. And did you know that there's gonna be like an e-rater looking specifically for those transitions? Use them, more formal ones. So every time that you're gonna say but, for example, a bit more formal. What's a word for bat? Another word for bat. Anyone?
Teacher, we can hear you very well.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Okay. So sorry. So I was saying other words for but are like however, nevertheless, nonetheless, in contrast, I don't know. Okay. So this is all about practice, believe me. I know that you don't normally speak that way. When you're speaking, you don't say however, nevertheless, instead of but, you just say but you need to practice, okay? So it's all about practice. Every time you are gonna say but, or you did say but, you can go back and say however, nevertheless, okay? Instead of so, for example, you could say therefore, thus, as a result, consequently, okay? So you have some ideas. The thing is, use transitions, okay? And if you can go for the more formal ones, then that's better. What else? Another thing I like about this response is the example. So as you can see, it's a long example. It says, last year before my big science midterm, it's very specific, right? My big science midterm, specific details. And it has different, I learned, okay? So different tenses, good grammar, the personal story. I like the example, but you can also do the same with one in simple present if you want to avoid using other tenses. One thing I like is how he is repeating the words, but he is also emphasizing on those specific things, right? So in the example, it's pretty clear what he's saying. So I made this mistake, and at the end, he says, I learned a lot. So that shows a clear connection to what he's saying, right? So I like that. The vocabulary isn't necessarily super fancy here. It could be better, but it's okay. In general, if you want one tip for vocabulary in general, look for adjectives. Okay, check out some adjectives. So look for synonyms for good, bad. Okay, so for example, listening, I felt really bad, right? Better adjectives, maybe adjectives for important. So it's very important. You could say it's crucial, it's key, it's essential. So adjectives are a great way to improve your vocabulary quickly. So if you just memorize 3 or 4, especially the ones that you use the most, like good, bad, important, then you're gonna be good with vocabulary. So that's something I could say. In general, the sentences seem a bit more complex, right? He's not saying, I like football, I like this, I enjoy that, this is this, that way. So he's explaining, you know? So that's something too. He uses synonyms, right? I felt really terrible, I felt miserable. That's good. Those are some things I could say, you guys. I don't know if you have any questions now or any comments. Okay.
No, teacher.
Okay, yeah, so it's pretty simple, right? This question is usually the simplest one. You don't have to know anything so much about structure. The template is okay. It's all about practice. You want a good score. And you will be practicing tomorrow with just money. And also we'll be practicing on Thursday, maybe looking at some of the grammar points that I was going to show you, and more tips. Okay, but I don't know if you don't have any other question, then I think that's gonna be for today. So no questions really, no comments, observations.
Uh, I have a, well, can you share with us maybe
Okay, guys. So
some
thank you.
web pages? Yes, can you hear me, teacher?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I can hear you, Francisco. Go ahead.
Okay, teacher. Maybe can you share with us maybe some questions or maybe web pages with some questions for free, maybe and practice?
Yes, sure, will do. There are actually tons of websites with these type of questions. I will share with you some links and also the presentation, and I will send you the presentation, the links for practice, the vocabulary, and some connectors, okay, to check out.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Anything else?
Teacher, could you send the link of vocabulary, please?
Yeah, yes, I will. I will send it. Sure. Okay. So before you go, I'm sending the survey, the daily survey. Please don't forget to fill it out. And I'll be seeing you all this Thursday. Hold on. I don't know why. Okay, now I sent it. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. See you all next class.
Bye, teacher.
Bye, teacher. Bye, teacher.
Thank you, teacher. See you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.